Welcome to another episode of Carolyn Talks Television. I'm Carolyn Topol, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Rachel Arnett.
Well, thank you. Hello, hello.
And Rachel and I are really excited about today's theme. We're actually going to do sort of a double shot in this particular one.
2 for 1. One time only? No, probably not.
Probably not. More often than not, you and I could probably fit in 7 or 8 subjects in 30 minutes if we had to, but we won't do that either. Not today. Today, though, we're going to start out talking about premium channels. Okay, and people at home are saying, what are they talking about? What's a premium channel?
Is it slightly cooler? I don't know.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
Sometimes
not.
cooler, sometimes not, yeah. Premium channels actually were a term started a really, really long time ago when cable was first beginning to come into the world in the very early 80s, really becoming more, for lack of a better term, not quite mainstream, but getting there.
Yeah.
And if you got cable, which was a big excitement because then you got more regular channels, you could also pay for these more upscale channels that would show movies not long after they aired in a theater. And those were channels like
HBO, Showtime, Stars, Cinemax.
And then the movie channel came along later, all these channels.
Turner Classic Movies now. It seems like there's a new one every day now, I think.
And these are the channels that when you get what used to be called basic cable, I assume a lot of you probably remember basic cable, it wasn't that long ago, but to add these premium channels, you actually had to pay more. So they had to give you more bang for your buck.
And even now, a lot of times you'll get them in packages instead of just one channel at a time.
Right.
You might get HBO and Showtime, but only Showtime in English and not Spanish. You know, there's lots of fun ways.
That's true. And in my case, for example, you have to go and you call and negotiate, and they want you to get the package. They want you to, that new term, bundle everything. We bundle the world. So you bundle the premium channels, and they give you like almost all of them, if not all of them at once. And while, yes, you pay for them, it's not nearly what it used to be. It used to be to get a premium channel, it was practically doubling your cable bill.
Absolutely.
So you might pick one, and it was a big deal. I still remember my very first, okay, I'm dating myself, folks, please forgive me, back when I was still in college. My parents, when I went home once on a college weekend, got cable and got HBO. That magic button at the end of these long boxes where you just sort of punched in buttons. It almost looked like some sort of a teleprompter or something thing that you had to keep pushing the buttons down.
The codes in. Yep.
But when you got the HBO button, you got channels that not only had movies, but they had movies that were not necessarily just rated G and PG.
Yeah, I think you had a lot more access to a lot of different types of shows or types of movies, really, at that point.
And at the time, I was a young adult. It wasn't like I was a child, but I had recently read the book by Jacqueline Suzanne, Once Is Not Enough, which, if any of you have ever read it, you know is a pretty risque book, as is most of Jacqueline Suzanne's books. And they had the movie on HBO. And I could not believe I was watching what I believe back then was an R-rated movie in my home den. And that was the first time I realized the possibilities also of cable, because I was already in a television communications program at college. So to me, this was huge. That I could watch something that prior to this, you would literally have to show an ID to get in the theater to see, was showing in my home.
And it's so interesting now to see how all of that has really transitioned, because I think it really did start along that path, and then as channels got older, they created their own shows, shows that wouldn't show on basic cable. Like we talked about last time with streaming shows, also showed on premium channels. And now it's at the point where they've received a lot of recognition for that, which, you know, even when I was a kid, I remember having to have preview weekends. I remember they would do free preview weekends of Showtime to get you hooked or whatever, or even Disney Channel, I remember.
That's true. Disney Channel used to also be, you have to pay extra for the Disney Channel. It's now included in most cable groupings, which is, I think, a wise Disney business decision.
Yeah.
Because they have like 42 network channels.
Yeah.
Right. But you would have these free previews. They would tantalize you, and they also started doing series on the premium channels. And they would start and give you the first 2 episodes, which showed during that week that you had. And then if you wanted to see the rest of the series, there was only one place you were going to find it. And that was on the premium network. So we move forward, and now we're in the wonderful world of the 2000s.
Yes.
And even the end of the 90s. In the end of the 1990s, it goes this far back, that's when these premium channels really started to learn what they could really do and how they could monopolize the whole world and get attention.
Absolutely. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I noticed with premium channels was that content that you could not at that point see anywhere, especially anything that might be considered risque or too old.
Or use language that would be considered censored.
There was something about, there's kind of unsigned this contract that when you pay for this channel, it's kind of permission for those things to exist. Whereas in a basic cable package, you know, if you're just getting a basic cable package for your children, shows like that, you wouldn't necessarily want them. But if you're paying for a channel and you know what type of shows are on there, you're kind of giving permission for that to be on your TV and in your home. So I think things got more risque.
And I think one of the earliest pieces of that puzzle, to give you a really good example, and I didn't realize just how long ago this had premiered, in 1997. I thought it was much, much, much later than that. 1997, a show came on HBO that I really think just changed the whole view of what a premium channel's capability was.
It set the tone, it was recognized.
And that was The Sopranos.
Which to this day, I think, and I think for a very long time, will have this kind of legendary status.
Without question, without question.
Because it just, I'll admit that when it was on, I was too young for it. And my parents didn't have HBO at the time, so I didn't see it. But I remember there always being kind of a buzz from the students whose parents had it. And I remember reading articles about the fact that, you know, there were large articles being written in the newspaper about TV shows. Like, that blew my mind. Even.
I mean, James Gandolfini became a name that would go down in history. I mean, we know sadly he passed, but
he became a superstar.
Everybody on that show became true stars, and the Emmys, for the first time, really seemed to take a departure from ABC, NBC, CBS, a little bit of Fox maybe. And then all of a sudden you saw an HBO series bringing home the statues.
And not just an HBO series, but an HBO original series.
Original series,
because
that's right.
They had times brought in, and even to this day, you know, there's a great show that you can find on HBO now called Summer Heights High, which is an Australian show. And it's hilarious and it's wonderful, but it's not their original series. It was made, I think, originally for ABC in Australia, and they imported it. But to have an original series by a premium network win many awards and have almost universal praise was pretty big.
I think the only thing I ever heard that was negative, and those people just didn't watch it, was that it was really violent. This was not your, I'm going to go home and turn on my TV and see what's on show. You had to have a destination of The Sopranos.
Yeah, this was not the TBS edit of Goodfellas. This was like real. This was real. Language, sex, violence, really all of it.
It was everything, and all in one package. And HBO, I personally believe since then, has still had the overwhelming preponderance of original shows.
Absolutely. For a premium network, you know, you look up the listings and there's something like 30 to 50, I wish I knew a more specific number, sorry, HBO shows, but then you look at them compared to Showtime where it's quite a bit fewer.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a statement on quality so much as the recognition that HBO has that this is a real market for them.
And I think they realize that, which is what has made them so popular. And a little later in the show, as we said, this is going to be a little bit of a two-piece episode. We will talk about some of the top shows and stars that were nominated for Emmys, even though I know this show will be airing. Mm-hmm. You're all going to see this after the Emmys, so let's see who won later. And we'll be talking about that in the following months. But we now know who the nominees are. Mm-hmm. As we're taping this episode.
And you'll see that quite a few of them are premium
channels. Yeah. Premium channels, or as we spoke about more recently, also streaming channel shows, original series. It's amazing what off the main networks have been able to do with their creativity.
Absolutely.
They're bringing in the creative teams and letting them really have the wings to fly, truly.
Absolutely.
I mean, not to be too cliche, but it's the truth.
No, it's true, and in many ways they're changing the TV landscape. You look at one of the other biggest shows that I can think of, HBO, going down in history, is Sex and the City. There was nothing like it on TV at the time from a female perspective about sex, about life, about a lot of different things. And I just remember I was in college when a lot of it was on, and at college people paid extra for HBO to specifically watch Sex and the City. And everyone was labeling, oh, you're a Charlotte, you're a Samantha. It created this entire language that people were using.
And what it did also was, I think that was one of the first shows to empower women that it's okay to talk about things like sex. And it wasn't just about the cliched, when you talk about soap operas that are on daytime, they still frequently use the word making love, because that's the acceptable thing, or going to bed, or sleeping together. Yes. But no, these women were totally honest, and they were buddies, and they were having sex, and some were having sex to find husbands and find love, and others, that was not their priority. Mm-hmm. And from a women's point of view, that was very, very new.
And it also didn't pass judgment on either one of those people. From the show perspective, there was never really this tone of, well, she's doing it the wrong way, and she should just be waiting for a husband. And when the relationships on the show came together, they also, for me, felt very realistic. One of my favorite couples on the show had really tough marital issues.
Yes. And
separated and came back together. And I remember being devastated, even though I didn't watch the beginning of the show for whatever, I don't remember when I came in, but I remember being really engaged by this couple and having the experience of watching that go down and realizing everything isn't a fairy tale, and that's fine.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with her for that happening. It just, I think for women, was a really powerful moment in TV.
And the jokes went both ways. Look, to have a joke, especially when you're having people who are different from each other, you'll have a joke when one is the straight person and one delivers the punchline. And sometimes the punchlines were at, for lack of a better term, at the expense of the person who is I want to have a husband and children and be happily ever after, or at the expense of the person who was all about how many people have you slept with in the past 6 days? 72. It was just, it didn't matter who they were. It just mattered that they were there. And this show became so big that 2 movies came out following it. Now, I don't know too many TV shows that could say they had 2 movies come out after that.
And pretty, not close after either.
No.
I think the last one was 8 or something years after.
And not that the movies were going to be these big box office Oscar-winning movies, but they were movies that they had a real loyal following. Those fans went.
The audience was still there.
Exactly. And they went, and they knew they would, and they were great. And it closed the circle of the show in a way you would never expect. It was, it made a series finale on steroids.
Yeah. And again, at no point did I ever truly roll my eyes and go, yeah, okay. Because it to me felt very much like these were real women and real men living their lives. And it was nice that for once the story was about the women.
And
Definitely
now,
passes the Bechdel test.
the way that shows like Showtime worked their way into the world of original series was through shows like Weeds, starring big star Mary Louise Parker. And the whole subject was the way this mom who needs cash can make it in the world is she ends up selling pot. Now nobody's saying follow her lead. That's not the purpose of the series.
The tone of the show really wasn't like that at all.
And especially at the beginning, it was a comedy. It got a little more dramatic as the series went on, but it was a comedy. It was hilarious watching her try to balance being a mom and raising her kids and keeping food on the table while selling pot.
And I think
marijuana, dope, weed, whatever we want to call it. And that's what it's called, Weeds. The Weeds.
Yeah. And I remember when I would watch the show, I think it brought a lot of awareness in a sense that people believed a lot of things about marijuana, about weed, and who used it and what it was used for and what the process of criminalization and all of that was. And there were a lot of times where I watched the show and learned something about the criminal justice system or learned something about the manufacturing of synthetic or whatever it may be. I did learn things from the show too.
It was an odd
an
side
odd way
effect,
to learn, but I did.
And then the other show also, Showtime was trying to be a little edgier, I think, in the way that they were going to try to compete with HBO by introducing shows that would certainly get your attention and open your eyes like nothing had.
That did not toe the line. They pushed the line. They covered the line. Oh,
no, they leapt over that line and they just broke it. And the other show was Queer as Folk, which was an Americanization. So it wasn't an original series, but it was an Americanization of a British series, Queer as Folk, about the gay community and the harder edge of the gay community. As opposed to another show that came much later on HBO, I believe, called Looking.
Yes,
which was more of the mainstream, what you would see more of a gay community.
More of what you typically see from a show about gay men, I think.
And certainly more of who you would see in your own neighborhood. The Queer as Folk group was a little bit above, it just a little out of the box. It was trying to say, hey, look.
Yeah.
It was meant to be flashy. It was meant to be loud. It was meant to be exciting.
Folk did not just mean folk.
Yes.
But
it also, the one thing that the American show did that the British show didn't do was it brought friendship, love, and romance to the show, which is why that series lasted 5 years, where the British one lasted 2 seasons, purposefully. That was just how it was focused. And now to some current shows, or things that we've seen more recently that you can get in on and possibly see on demand, because many times, like the streaming, while they don't drop them all at once, they will show them in like an 8-week season.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll have 8 episodes, your season's done, and then it's on demand. But go look on demand, you'll find it. For example, even though it's recently, so much attention, I would say, current king of original series on a premium channel is...
Oh, it has to be Game of Thrones.
There
is no other choice.
There
is no other show that almost everyone knows something about, even if they haven't seen it.
And in fact, before we came for this show, I was looking at some polls about best series on premium channels. Literally, by a percentage difference of over 40%, Game of Thrones was number 1. Everybody knew it.
And I honestly agree. I watch a lot of premium shows, and for me, Game of Thrones has always stood out. One, because obviously it has source material to draw from. It has the Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin, and it's a great series, but they pull from it and act it and create the world in such a way that you are there from day one. The language change, the status of the individuals, it is all so believable. And it's meant to be a mix of something that seems like it could be feudalist, British, but also fantasy. And I think it just draws you in.
I even think it borders sci-fi in sometimes.
At times, absolutely.
I do. And it does have the violence that you wouldn't see on a mainstream network as well. It's got all of it. It's the whole package, and it certainly will keep your eyes opened. It's one of the first shows I ever heard people say they would binge watch to catch up if they hadn't seen episodes.
That's true, yeah. I've known people who have watched more than one season in a weekend just to catch up because they heard the new one was coming out.
And to me, I after watching a few episodes of Game of Thrones, all I thought of was, that must be exhausting, because that's quite a series.
It is exhausting.
It's draining, it's emotional, it's frightening.
It's probably, for me, one of the most emotionally draining series I've ever watched. And it's on purpose. It's in the plot.
Right.
That some of these people that you get so connected to, and in any other story they would be the victorious heroes, are murdered on screen before your eyes.
Yeah.
Or suffer some other travesty. And you feel as bereft as these people feel because over 3 seasons you've come to love them. And we're so trained to believe that everything will always work out for the best in fairy tales and happy ever after. And man, does Game of Thrones go the other way sometimes.
And now I'm going to do name dropping.
Name drop, all right.
Name dropping of shows that I bet a lot of our viewers didn't realize were premium channel original series. And many of them you could either get on DVD as a whole series or on demand, or some of them, and to me this is really an impressive thing, on other more mainstream networks that are sort of on the cusp of mainstream.
Where they've purchased the rights to do the repeats, yep.
And they do the repeats of these shows because they were so well received on premium channels.
I remember Sex and the City did that. I think it was TBS again,
yes,
actually.
Sex and the City did that. Yep. The Tudors did that. And that was a very risque version of Henry VIII. Let me tell you, I think he wishes he had that much in his life excitement. I think he was just a fruitcake historically. I think he was a nut. But, you know, the other networks have picked up the Tudors. And I actually, more than one, I think I've seen it on, which is wild. Many of you know the amazing series Band of Brothers.
Which I unfortunately have never seen, but I've heard such incredible things. It's on my list.
That was one of the most brilliant series, where you would have called that like a mini-series at one point, because it was just to contain 10 episodes.
Okay.
About a real troop of, in an army during World War II in the European part of the war. And they followed, these are based on real people, and these real people, when Band of Brothers walked away with a gazillion Emmys the year it aired originally, they actually had some of those people who were still alive at the time.
Wow.
It's just, but once again, HBO, this was a premium channel. And now before we lose our time, because wow, a half an hour can go by quickly.
About Shameless, we could talk about True Blood, but we're going to talk.
And Billions, Billions
yes.
also. I mean, so many good shows, hit those. We're going to say some of the shows you should not miss. Outlander is on Starz. Ray Donovan is Showtime. And of course, Game of Thrones on HBO, which is nearing the finale. And now, Emmy nominees. And let's see who won, because the nominees for the Best Drama Series, and many of which you're going to say they're not on ABC, NBC, CBS anymore, are The Handmaid's Tale.
Hulu.
Game of Thrones.
HBO.
This Is Us. NBC. You got one.
You got one.
Okay. The Crown. Netflix.
Yep.
Okay. The Americans.
FX.
I think so, yes.
Yep.
Stranger Things.
There's your show.
Have
we talked about Stranger Things yet?
I'm not sure. Maybe you need to do that.
Maybe like a sci-fi next time.
Okay. Westworld, HBO.
And sci-fi.
There we go.
Connections.
Comedy series. Atlanta, FX.
So good.
Barry, HBO. Blackish. Oh, ABC got in there somehow. Yay, broke the way. Curb Your Enthusiasm, again, is back in the picture. HBO. Glow. So good.
So good on Netflix.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Amazon. You know, I used to buy my lights, you know, when you used to get the lights that last, the light bulbs that last a long time.
They used to only sell textbooks.
Silicon Valley, HBO. talk about your geek squad on steroids. There we go. We got the ultimate geeks. And the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Netflix.
So let's see, that's two network shows.
2 network shows for best comedy and 2 network shows for best drama. Out of all those, because there's more than 5, folks. I think there's like 8 in each category, 6, 8 in each category. And that says a lot. So when we're talking about really try your streaming channels, try your premium channels, there's a lot out there.
We're not just saying it, they're really good.
They're really good. And obviously the theater or the acting world believes that too.
Absolutely.
Because they're the ones voting on this. I'm not voting on it.
Yep.
This isn't the People's Choice Awards, folks. The
And
Emmys
big
are
name
only
actors are on them.
the Academy is the ones voting on this. Best actor, and once again, we're hitting all, very few are on network. So we have Jason Bateman and Sterling K. Brown. Hello, NBC. He's going to this guy.
He should win everything, honestly.
Yeah, I think Sterling K. Brown could win for a commercial, personally.
Yeah, he's incredible.
If you ever have Instagram, any of you follow Sterling K. Brown, because he even has good Instagrams. Nobody does good Instagram.
He should win a Webby.
There we go. And all he's doing is like promoting something. Ed Harris, all these people. So we want to make sure that you just hit this, check your Emmys out. We're going to come back and visit the Emmys. So that was lead actor. So Jason Bateman, Sterling K. Brown, Ed Harris, Matthew Rhys, Milo Ventimiglia, and Jeffrey Wright.
From Westworld again.
From Westworld again, and I love Jeffrey Wright. Just saying, Angels in America, loved Jeffrey Wright for a very long time on his screen, okay? And lead actress in a drama, I'm just gonna go back and really add this because I love Claire Foy in The Crown. Once again, not on a mainstream, typical network. Tatiana Maslany for Orphan Black, Elizabeth Moss, A Handmaid's Tale, Sandra Oh for Killing Eve, Kerry Russell, The Americans, and Evan Rachel Wood for Westworld. So much happening out there, folks. Rachel and I are going to be hitting our TV screens. We are going to be watching the Emmys for you and with you. And we're going to make sure to report on that because I think our next show is going to be what happened at the Emmys.
Yeah, I think Emmy wrap-up would be good.
An Emmy wrap-up. It may be a little late for some, but it's always bears repeating who's the best.
Yeah. And it's never too late for us to talk about anything.
Oh, no, it's never too late. We just talked about a 1997 series. It's never too late for us to talk about anything. So, Rachel, fun show. Watch premium channels, watch your streaming channels, and watch the Emmys. And Rachel and I both wish you a happy fall. And hopefully, for those of us who are having heat waves on both coasts, we'll get out of it soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.